Okay, so welcome everyone to this second webinar in our series of 4. So this is going to be for the step A of the ABC. And we will naturally, when we do this kind of training, because the whole method is interrelated, it will touch upon the other aspects, but it's mainly step A. So we may be able to go through it fairly quickly. We'll see. I do have something to add, though, to the step A that I meant to do last week. So I will do that first, which is to do with the context of the method within the context of the pulse taking within all of the diagnosis that you might want or be able to do. So I will start with that and we'll see how we go. So let's dive in, shall we? And I will do my share of the PowerPoint. Okay, so in my book, yellow one, on page 17 is this diagram. And this is the thing I wanted to just bring up. So this is to do with where is the method within the whole flow of our treatment method. And I have likened, well, let's just start with a top thing here, the words main complaint. In fact, I'm going to draw it out so that you take it as it comes. So just you will see this diagram again in a minute. So basically, on the top left, we have the main complaint. So I liken this to the sun shining in the sky, in that it's always there, it should always be there, kind of driving our diagnostic process. So let's say we live somewhere where it's always sunny, then the main complaint should be like that. So what do we mean by the main complaint? This should be the main things that the person has come with. Or you could say another way of finding this out is asking the question something like, how will you know that you've got better? So I'm sure you might have had this kind of experience with people, that there are many, many things that some people come with, and it can be hard to unpick which one is the most important thing. So if you can boil it down to a main complaint, it's extremely useful for the diagnostic process in general. And in a way, it should be the first thing we have on our piece of paper. So it's surprisingly easy to, I find it surprisingly easy to lose track of it if my note taking is not really on point. So I do like sort of writing it out again and again in my notes. What is the main complaint? Okay, so into this, naturally, we have the process of questioning. So these are the 10 questions formally, which normally start with something like sleep and starts with fever. Some people start with sleep, and you can go through all of the main systems. So that's the questioning aspect. Super important in Chinese medicine, obviously. And how much of that you do is a matter of personal taste. Some people like to mix it into to their palpation. In applied channel theory, that's something we do. We can do the questioning as we do the palpation of the channels. So that's one way of doing the questioning. Some people like to formally have a kind of quite a long session of that. And then there are the other signs. So these are the other diagnostic signs. So that could be things like the tongue. It could be the traditional color and sound of the person. So color is the color of the face that you can see, the sound of the voice. Those are very important features of the 5-element process, as I'm sure many of you know. So other things you could look out for are some people can smell odors, some people can sense the emotions. This is a very nice one to work with. So all of those give you a sense of all of the kind of signs. So this questioning, in a way, you could think of as symptoms, and all the signs are feeding into our process. So this is all a flow. And in here, I have the idea that our intention is really important to make the person better, so we can help them get better. And I think that's the best question we can have with our fingertips before we put our fingers on the pulse is, what do I need to know from the pulse to make you better? And that's the question I often do have when I treat people. This week I've been kind of fortunate in a way to have 2 people with like really complicated presentations of a psycho-emotional level, and I honestly didn't know what to do before I got to it. So, oh, actually, look here, we can do a pulse. We can do an artery, and here we have the Jing method. So with our fingers on the artery, we have the question, what do I need? This is the intention to make somebody better. And this is the perfect way of setting up the pulse taking process. So obviously the Jing method has got kind of layers of, it's got 3 rounds of A, B, and C. So it does take a bit of time. I'd estimate it takes about 3 to 5 minutes. So that's not too much, but it's not nothing either in the context of a treatment. So it is, as I, obviously I think it's worth it, but it's as short as is possible to be practical, and that's why it is kind of only these 3 steps. I kind of don't want to make it any longer than that. And then, of course, out of that process, we have what you could call the treatment plan. Whatever it is. So it could be your overall plan, like maybe you're going to do massage first or something like that, or Tina, or it could be basically your exact points. You may need to have more information at some point in here, or you may have some other methods. I usually choose to do the palpation that I do from applied channel theory here after the Jing method as a means of clarifying what I thought was going on, and clarify and sort of selecting my point selection even better. But of course, everybody's got a different way of treating overall. So, you may have your own ways of formulating the treatment plan, but this is a kind of basic, this is a basic flow. You may have other methods, like could be abdominal palpation. So this is one way of doing the flow of the treatment. Another thing to mention at this point, somewhat separate, but just what we're on this screen, when we have this A, B, and C of the Jing method, we can have notation exactly at the intersect after each round. So after A, we have notation, after B, we have notation, and after C. So that way we don't have too much to write down at once. So any questions on that, or any comments? No. Okay. No trouble. So that's the context of where this sits within, the overall flow of a treatment. So here we go to begin. Step A. So this is called the whole pulse method. This is the nicest phrase, I think, to describe what we can do, in that it really is a feeling of the entire pulse. So we're feeling the whole thing. Our fingers are on top of the whole on top of the whole pulse as one. So you can imagine my three fingers. Instead of me just thinking I've got three fingers, I imagine they're one finger. Okay, so just imagine that they move as one. So the sense is as one. So in other words, the information coming from each finger should be equal. That's the best way of putting it. It's kind of hard to describe what I mean by this, but one should on purpose not select one finger over the other. Normally when we do pulse diagnosis, it's a bit like playing the trumpet. The fingers go down separately. 1, 2, 3. First finger, second finger, third finger. That's normally how we do it. Of first of all, whichever hand we do, but we normally go through a sort of routine, and very often we're thinking about the organs. I'm sure I'm not alone in finding that when I started doing pulse diagnosis, I think I kind of jumped into looking at the organs first, and that can be a kind of cause of confusion, really, because we can go too deep at that level. It's really nice to step back and think, I've got a bigger vision, rather than thinking what's going on with the organs. I can just think what's going on with a big picture of somebody. So that's what the whole of step A is about, is what's the big picture. Okay, now within that, what I call A1, like a part of step A, is the overall pulse method. So that's this first one on the slide here. So that's really picking up. And this is a simplified version from what's in comparison in the book, because it had a slightly more complex sort of view. But it gives out the first impressions of the person system. And it's a simple excess and deficiency method we use. So this really is straightforward. I kind of have a challenge with people when they say, "Oh, I can't do pulse diagnosis," that they definitely can do this. I mean, it is not this is not difficult, because we are really just feeling the whole pulse, and we just are sensing, is it excess or is it deficient? I'll go into more detail in a minute. The second part of the step A is the 3-Jiao method, the 3-burner method. It explores imbalances as found in the 3 burners of top body, middle body, and lower body. And get rid of those. And then the new to the Jing method for this seminar, and for this seminar series, is the A3. It's the 3 layers method. And that's, I will explain it more, but basically you've got the Wei Qi, the Ying or nutritive Qi, and the Jing or essence. And that's it's a really interesting way of looking at the pulse. And even though this is an advanced aspect, I think it's super useful to have this. So it's worth weaving in, and it's not so advanced that I can't explain it in this webinar. This is one of the methods that is hard to have enough time to teach it, but for some of the people who've done this course already and come back to sort of understanding this 3 layers method, they find it very satisfying to have this extra kind of emphasis. So it's a nice system. I know it may sound complicated at this point. I'll just stop sharing. Um, Basically, may sound complicated to have these three things, and you might be thinking, oh wow, there's going to be 9 of these sub steps in total, but it's not as complex as it sounds, because in my impression of doing this, only the information that's useful comes up in any one session. So sometimes A is not very useful and B and C are useful. So it really depends on the condition of the person that is in front of you. Um, Sometimes A is very useful and has got the keys to show what the most important thing to do is. And I'll try to explain what some of those things are as we go through the method. The other thing that A is for is giving giving more information further down the line for the rest of the method. So A also, one of the critical things about A, I'd say overall A gives some useful information for treatments, but most of the point of A is a process of orientation. It gives you a really accurate sense of the whole pulse, and it feeds into the information later into B and C. So it's a kind of preparatory step. It's a developmental step. So do you get what I mean by that? That it's something to do with information. The information from A mostly feeds into the rest of the system, and some of it comes out as actual treatment principles. So for instance, if we just have excess and deficiency, it may give us, if somebody is basically deficient, it will give us a really good steer as to whether they need tonification or reduction as a general approach. So it's actually incredible. It sort of sounds simplistic to say that, but sometimes we can get lost in all the details. And if we have this kind of diagram that I was just showing earlier of the main complaint working through with the intention, then if from A we just have the sense of deficiency, let's say, then it can give you a sense of, oh, right, so this is a deficient picture for this main complaint. Interesting. My treatment plan is going to be different. So that's the point of it is this orientation for the whole system. But key information does come out. Right. Share. Okay, you can see the big. You can see, oh, now what are you seeing, folks? Karina, just stop the recording for a sec. Okay, great. So here we are with the overall pulse method, and this is a simplified version of it, but this is actually the most useful bit of the method that I had developed in the book. So we just ask the pulse one thing: is the pulse strong or weak? And I'm going to give you some other words for this, which is forceful and forceless. Here on the left of the screen is the original Chinese, and this one here is called Yo Li, which means having strength or having power. This character means power. It's like a knife, or it's like something forceful pushing forwards. It's a powerful object, like a plow going through nature. So Yo Li means I have. Yo means having in Chinese. So that means I have power or I have force. So forceful is another word which I think is better than strong and weak. The word forceful and forceless have been used a lot, so I'm going to be suggesting that we use those ones. So Wu Li, Wu means not having, So Wu Li means no power or force less. So we can just, this is asking the pulse, hey pulse, is it forceful or is it forceless? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Okay, so ideally it's somewhere between forceless and forceful. Okay, so it's that's the ideal thing, is to be in the middle. So far, clear so far? Yep. Okay. So when we have this word li or force, we may be wondering what are we experiencing? What is it a force of? So my suggestion is that we have inside our artery, I mean, of course, I've been describing to you the fact that we are feeling an artery, right? So that is totally still the case in what I'm going to be saying. Our fingers are touching the artery with our intention, and we are feeling with our feeling capacity into the artery. And inside the artery, we have a wave of something that is coming through, and it is traveling through the artery, and it has a height. And our experience of this is a sense of it's a sense of fullness and a sense of presence of actually what is blood. I mean, it's the beating of the heart eventually that's going to be doing that. And that heartbeat is being propelled down the artery, and that's what we're feeling. And this is how much of this, how high this wave is coming is, I think, what gives us the sense of the force that we experience. So this is this height is the force. However this is, you've got a sense of a wave that is giving you the sense of a presence and power, I guess. This maybe another way analogy is to think of a voice. And imagine somebody opens their mouth and out comes a big voice, okay? So it's huge. So you could say this was forceful. So it has volume. This voice has volume. So in the same way that a voice has volume and is forceful, or let's just say it doesn't come out very much, and the person has a certain timidness, then it is forceless. And you know this this is a kind of key determinant of how much chi somebody has, is whether they have a forceful voice or a forceless voice. So this is like a manifestation of chi. You know, we know this, that lung chi deficiency has a forceless voice. So, you know, if you sort of know that, if you then hear a deficiency of voice, you can think, all right, that's a deficiency of chi, that's deficiency of lung chi. Very similarly, the pulse, whether it has force or not, is a really interesting factor of how much chi there is. So this gives you a really good steer on the amount of chi in the body. Just like lung chi is found in the voice, forceful or forceless, a forceful or forceless pulse gives you a sense of that. Okay, so basically, how are you going to do that? When you have got your finger on the pulse, you can be asking the pulse the question. We come to A1, we just ask a really simple question about how full or empty it is. And I'm going to be suggesting that out of 5, we can get the answer. So if we have 1 out of 5, then this is the most forceless you would expect an average pulse to be? If it was 5 out of 5, that would be most forceless. 5 out of 5 is most forceful. So that means 3 out of 5 is basically neither forceless nor forceful, or rather it's just what we call a normal pulse, somewhere in the middle. So this is a really easy way of doing a diagnosis. We just come up with a number out of 5. So with A1, we go to the left hand first, and we might say, oh, okay, it's 3 out of 5. Great. Happy with that. It's a nice chi. Go to the other side, to the right side, and then you might suddenly find, oh, it's 2 out of 5. That's quite a lot of deficiency. That's more deficient than I might have expected, let's say. It's very normal for it to have 3 and 2 like that, or it might be 2 and 2. So left and right tend to be different. If in disease, if they're the same, then that's a good sign. So the ideal, what we're kind of hoping for, is 3 and 3. And that would be probably also the case for somebody who was in the prime of their life, no diseases. It's probably a 30-year-old looking after themselves, or a 25-year-old looking after themselves is probably going to have a 3 and a 3. As we get more deficient, those numbers can start to go down. So start to get to 2 and 2, or even with ultra deficient people, 1 and 1. But of course, it can go the other way. Okay, any questions? No, all fine. Okay, thumbs up. Good.
Very good idea.
Yeah, you like it? Do you think you can do it? Yeah. So now it is basically pretty simple. Either you get clear information from this that's useful, or sometimes when you go to do this, you put your fingers on the pulse and you just get a sense of complexity. So it's a really interesting experience to intend to do this method and put your fingers on the pulse and think, right, all I'm going to do is just do the excess and deficiency like I've like I intend to do every time. And you put your fingers on the pulse and you think, wow, there's so much going on here. It's like a can of worms. It's everything's moving. There's excess, there's deficiency, there's movement. Well, that's your information. You may not be able to even do this A1 part, even though you usually can. But if you feel that there's so much going on, then that is just information feeding into the rest of the method. And usually that's going to be a part B or a step B change, that there are excess extraordinary vessel findings or excess findings in the channels that are really important, that we've really got to address. So if you feel that there is so much going on, you can't believe it, that is probably an excess finding for the extraordinary vessels. So it's a really nice thing to look out for, that excessness of those pulses. You may also have some other information, like there is no pulse in one hand. That's another possibility. So it can be useful to kind of pick that up right away, so you don't get put off by it. If you're sort of trying to do too much and you absolutely can't find the pulses on one side, you can be discouraging. In a way, it's better just to quickly go to the other hand and see whether there's a pulse on the other side as well. Usually there's a pulse on one side or the other. I don't think I've experienced somebody with no pulse on either side. Have either of you? No. I mean, it's quite common to have no pulse on one side, right? I mean, it happens. And it's also an opportunity to say, is there anything wrong with me as a pulse taker? like for instance, if it's always not working on one side, then we think, are my fingers okay? Are they, or am I in the right place? So it's important to go through that step of A as an orientation, and in a way, also the pressure's off. In the process of step A, you can also put your mind back again to the main complaint and some of the other features, and reorientate yourself to the case at hand. Because when somebody's is lying down to do the pulse taking, sometimes they can stop talking and they can relax, and then you as a practitioner can relax into the process. It's less difficult than just going straight into really, really detailed work. So it's a bit of a kind of warm up for you as a practitioner. You can just kind of feel your way into it. All right, so that's the beginning of A. You're just going to have a simple, findings, as I suggested. I'm going to show you, no, it's fine. We did it already, actually. I'll just do the screen share again. Right, let's see if I can get this right this time. Yes, good. All right. So you're just going to get a reading like 3 and 2 or 4 and 4, for instance. Very rarely 5 and 5. It does happen, but that's really, really kind of serious excess. So trying to get a sense of the 3 being somewhere in the middle. And I think it's quite useful being it out of 5. You kind of can't get lost when it's out of 5. Occasionally you might start thinking, I think they're 2.5. Well, that's fine. If you're really sure they're 2.5, that's okay. You're just getting better at it. Basically, out of 5 is quite useful, and that's how my practice has developed with this reading of excess and deficiency. So basically, forcelessness is deficiency. Forcefulness is excess. Somewhere in the middle is a mixture. So it's just a mixture of yin and yang, effectively. And as I mentioned, a useful steer for later. Okay. So this slide is saying the original method of step A worked with depth and speed, and that also showed gave you ideas of the 8 principles. So if you have my book, have a look at that if you want. I won't go into the more detail now about it, but it's pretty easy to add on depth and speed for the rest of the 8 principles. It's kind of, having worked with this method for a while, it's just, this aspect has just dropped off because it just doesn't, it's not so useful to look for depth and speed at this point. My impression is that when a pulse has got more going on, you just read the information. You have a sense of it. When you're trying to do this excess deficiency reading, forceful and forceless, you just begin to, if it's necessary, pick up other information. And actually the more advanced method of this step A is where you're open to any quality arising in this very early stage of the method. So it might be that as you're going about sensing forceful or forceless, you might think, wow, I don't know if they're forceful or forceless. I'm just feeling it's slippery. And you just have a really clear sense that it's slippery. Well, that is just like an absolutely grade A diagnosis. That is that they are so slippery that all of the positions are slippery. The whole thing is slippery, leading, showing something like dampness. So it just basically, the quality has impinged on your perception. You were trying to just answer forceful or forceless, answer excess and deficient, and in fact, you got another finding instead. So that's great. You can just write it down. So this does happen quite often, that I'm trying to do this simple method, and in fact, the more complex thing comes in. So that's the best way of doing it, when it shows itself to you. And remember, it's in response to this question of what to do. It's coming from the main complaint, and we just get it. If we just are open with the beginning of A being the overall pulse, and we're just like, okay, what's going on with the overall pulse, and we just get a sense of slipperiness, then we think, well, what's really important to help this person is to address their slipperiness. And we haven't even done a B or C at that point. So the slippery pulse has shown itself. So that's an example of where at step A, we get really useful information. As it happens, some people use this overall step A kind of method all the time. And, it's pretty useful. You might just, you can be reading some case histories where they say things like the pulse was wiry, the pulse was thin, without saying which position those phrases are addressing. So that can be useful to have it like that. So it arises, basically what I'm saying is it arises naturally as we're trying to do it. It's wiry and thin as well. So then that's great. That's good diagnosis. It's come to you. Okay, so this excess and deficient reading gives you information. It's giving you like a kind of steer. So if you've got let's just say out of step A, and this is very often the case, that all we get out of it, or all I get out of it, is this reading of, let's say, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, it's deficient finding. Well, that feeds in to the rest of the method to B and C. So that just gives me the information that there is deficiency. I know this sounds simple, but it's actually really useful to boil it down to this sometimes, because it's not just that you kind of think there's deficiency, you can actually feel there's deficiency. You know that they are deficient. So to give you an example of this, I've recently had a cancer patient who is in the stage of it being a terminal stage, so they're no longer having treatment, and I always think that this is well, I haven't treated many people like this, but when I have, I've often thought that it's a very kind of privileged position, because you get to see a disease process that is usually got loads of medication and loads of interventions on top of it to so you can't actually see what the disease is like. And I had no idea really what I would find, but I found with her that there was much more deficiency than I had found in some other people in the same stage. There were some little small excess signs, but basically her story was that she has deficiency at the stage she was at. So, I just thought that was interesting. It was interesting for me, but also shows the general approach that I want to take. So I hope that you can see that it gives you clear treatment strategies for the rest of the method. All right, let us move on to the second bit of this. So let's just say this is A1. We've got 2 and 2. The next stage of step A is going to be A2 before we go on to A3. Oops. And A2 is the 3 Jiao method. Okay, I'm just going to use this paper so that I can show you basically what this is about. The 3 Jiao method is dividing a person into sections. get the prize for a bad drawing. Okay, so the upper section is the upper jowl, the middle section is the middle jowl, and I use these abbreviations, UJ for upper jowl, MJ for middle jowl, LJ for lower jowl. And in the text, it says that it isn't just the usual organs we have of the heart and the lung and things like that. It's basically the whole body, all the way up to the hands and the head, that is the upper jowl. The middle jowl is all of the middle part of the torso. The lower jowl is the lower part of the body. So this is a really interesting kind of take on the three jowl. And I think it's really, really useful to have that. And this comes out of the Jing directly. And I will show you. In fact, let's just, no, I'll go through the description here. So the first position, or the first pass, as it's referred to in the text, is for the Sun position, it reflecting the condition of the upper burner, as I just drew. And as it says, including the head, the skin, the hair, as far as the hands. Okay, so it's not just the head and hands and figure, but also the skin and the hair, the little hairs on the body. So basically, all the way out to the exterior is the upper jowl. The second position, which is also called guan. So there's these phrases of saying sun, guan, and che. So the second position, or guan, is the condition of the middle burner, including the abdomen and the lumbar region. So not just the front, but also the back. Okay. So notice also it hasn't got the organs. Normally, when we talk about the three jowl, most people think about the organs that go in the three jowl, but these are like whole regions. And the third position, or che position, reflects the condition of the lower burner, which is the lower abdomen to the feet. So it's like a whole region. It's like splitting the body into three, and you've got these three regions. So I think it's a pretty useful kind of gauge. And this is an example of something that you do get in Chinese medicine quite a lot, but it's like a hologram of basically the pulse. If you put the artery overlain here, and here's a hand with the artery on it, the first position of the artery, the whole first position relates to that, the whole second position relates to that, and it should be both. It should be on both arms for it to be valid. If it's only on one side, that is not a valid three jowl reading. So it says later on they should be of the same grade, left and right. Oh, sorry, it should be the same left and right. My phrase was from another bit. So basically, yeah, so it's like a hologram that the further, if you look at your own hand, or I'll just show you here, the further out you get towards the fingers, it's as if you're going up. This direction is generally considered more yang, and going from the feet up to the head is more yang. So the more you go towards the wrist is more yang, and it's like you're going up from the bottom to the middle to the top. So that's the basic orientation of the pulse in the hands. It's really nice. I think it's really nice to realize that that is what the pulse is in the hands, that it's got this rising kind of rising hologram meaning. Okay, now let's look at the text here. So in Chinese, basically, this is what it says in Jing, Book 1, Chapter 3. It says nearly exactly what I've written in English. This was my translation. I mean, it's pretty simple because it basically says the sun, and I'll see if I can find the spotlight. Ah, good. All right, basically, this says sun, which means inch, in the inch rules the upper burner. So that says upper burner. That says higher, and that says jiao or burner, and that says it extends out to the head, the skin, the hair, and finally to the hands. So that's all it says. The guan rules the middle burner and the abdomen and the lower back. And then the che, or the third one, rules the lower burner, and that's lower abdomen reaching as far as the feet. That's foot there. I recognize that. And I think this is something like Xiao Chang. Okay, and then finally, a bit later, it says the pulse has 3 positions. They tend to be of equal grade. So this is really interesting that when the pulse is balanced, it should be of an even nature throughout it. And when you put your fingers on the pulse, you shouldn't have to go looking out for excess or of a particularly strong nature in one position or other. The fingers should basically feel like you're feeling like a smooth tube, and it should be sort of even throughout. The fact is that often the middle position feels bigger, but it's not really bigger. You have to try to, as you probably have got to this stage in your training, it takes a while, but you kind of calibrate for the middle to be sometimes stronger, which because it shouldn't really be stronger. It should be of equal grade. So I hope that is understandable. I'd like to just see if you are all on board. Any questions? No? No? Oh, good. Good. That's good.
It's very typical that the middle is stronger, but should it be, or is it just, has it does something to do with the bone underneath?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is something with the bone. When the bone is underneath it, it kind of reflects the artery above it. So the trick is to try to get your fingers on top of the artery only and not push through it onto the bone. So the whole process that I think is quite magical is to realize that we're doing artery diagnosis and we are putting our fingers on an artery. So I kind of sometimes imagine that I'm jumping onto a horse or something like that. I'm jumping onto something that's dynamic with my fingers, and the fingers have to temporarily all work independently to get onto the artery to feel it, and then we diagnose as one thing. So there is actually loads going on, right, with pulse diagnosis. It is, of course, really skillful, but if we start to feel the artery more, we'll just be having a sense of the artery as a unit and tune out the fullness that's coming from the bone underneath it, if that makes sense. So that can be a process of going really lightly sometimes to try to feel the artery itself. Now that's when it's normal, but there are reasons why the middle pulse is sometimes really big for real, and then that's a finding then. So we have to have some experiences of normal pulses before we jump into the conclusion of thinking, oh, this is a full middle pulse.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Because I like the way you position the patient lying down with the hand relaxed, because then you avoid this bone and the other positions with the arm.
Excellent. That's
so
an
I think
excellent,
it's a very correct way of doing it.
Yeah, that's totally true. That's great. I've forgotten that it actually it comes up less when the hands are in the thumb up position.
Yeah, you have a relaxed wrist there.
The relaxed wrist means that you can feel the artery more as an independent unit. It just, you kind of don't have so much of that issue of the middle position.
Imagine if you have the hands like this, you very easily get the bone.
Yeah, like this. Exactly. When your hands are like this, actually what's happening is that it stretches all of the fascia, and it stretches the skin onto the artery, and sort of presses it down onto the bone. So it's not that it's impossible to do it like that way, but I just think it makes it a lot harder.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, great. Good question. Perfect question. All right, so I will do screen share. The pulse has 3 positions. They tend to be of equal grade in a normal, healthy pulse. That is. Okay, so we look out for any any of unusual. Let's say that should say unusual. That they may be found bilaterally at any of the 3 positions. So, for example, a bilateral floating quality found at the first position is diagnostic usually of a wind invasion. Okay, so both front positions are full. So let's just try to decode that. What is going on then? When we have the front position both being full on the left and the right. Well, when I say left and right, that means it's a real 3-joule finding. If it's only on one side, then it's really to do with the organs, because we normally have heart, liver, kidney, and so forth. So when it's both of them, it's the whole of the upper jowl, and this is the area that usually gets affected with external pathogens coming in first. So this is when it's floating, we know that the body's chi is being mobilized to fight off a pathogen. Now, this is super useful. Karina, can you just stop? Karina? Oh, she's not there.
I am here. Hold on.
It's fine. Great, thank you. As I was saying, when you have external pathogens coming in, they affect the top part of the body first. We say the lung is a tender organ, and that's because it reaches up into this upper part of the body. So when the chi is mobilized by the body, it tends to make the first position of the pulse full and floating, and that is how you know that there's a pathogen entering the system. And not just that, there's a pathogen present and the body's fighting it. So that's really important. So during COVID, this was incredibly important, this reading, because, sometimes you might just think, the person, I don't know, is the person off color, or do they have COVID? And that's actually really, really useful to know. And it's a useful thing to know whether there is an active pathogen present and that the body is actually fighting it. So let's look at another example. A bilateral forceless or forceful as an opposite found in the second position would be either deficiency or fullness of the middle burner. So this is just giving you some options. Just using the first one, a forceless pulse in the second position shows a deficiency of the middle burner. So that's like the chi of the organs of digestion. So that's also can be interesting if there's in that case a forceless one would be like a gap in the picture. Just going back to the phrase that we had here, the pulse has 3 positions. They tend to be of equal grade. So that's just a reminder that we want them to be equal. If there's so you could be looking for a gap in the evenness or an unusual fullness. And the third comment here is you don't have to kind of look for there's no special notation for this. You just can write, you can write down middle jowl full or middle or upper jowl full. So I do it like that. I'll show you what my current way of doing cases looks like. So here is an example of somebody. This person had a ongoing headache kind of situation, and here is sorry, just close that. yeah, so A1, so just if you can see it fine, can't you? Yeah, okay, so A1 says 2.5 and 4. So it's quite uneven. And in fact, in this case, I've got the word short, and that's a special phrase to say that they don't have a upper jowl pulse. There's like a gap. It's short in that it does not reach the end of where it should be. It's extremely interesting to find that kind of pulse. And so the next week they were also short. So this was useful, this shortness. It showed something about their energy. So actually, this was where it was like the opposite of what I mentioned about the active invasion of a pathogen. In this case, they don't have their energy fully deployed, and there's a gap in the upper burner. And that often is something I think of as a gap in the immune system. Yeah, so that's basically what the notation can look like. Obviously, I know what A1, A2, A3 are. Some people who, if you're starting out with this, it may be helpful for you to write a bit more down on the actual application, or however you're doing it. For instance, for A2, you might say 3 joule, for instance. I mean, if it helps, 3 levels, or you can write it longhand, something like that. Excess deficiency. So something
Jamie,
along those lines. Yes,
do you always go left, right?
I always go left, right.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know if that's absolutely the standard in Chinese medicine. Out of interest, which way do you go?
I often go right, left, just because of the way I'm looking at them. If you see what I mean.
Yes, is that sort of
My left is their right? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that because of? Is this when they're lying down on the couch, or just?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people do the needling right, left. I think that it's possible that when I learned to do this, we did left, right, and I think that's because of the thinking about the heart, and thinking about the heart being like in chapter 8 of the Su Wen, where it says the heart is the emperor, and the other, all the other organs. So you sort of do the heart first, and the first kind of organ. So it probably comes out of that. I think it doesn't matter exactly, but I think it probably the most useful thing is do it the same every time.
Yeah.
Okay. For the purposes of learning this method with me, I probably just like to suggest that if you do left, right, then it matches other features in my own notation system, like what you're seeing in front of you now. 2.5, 4 means that's 2.5 on the left, 4 on the right. So it's just a sort of course, do it your own way eventually yourself, but just for learning, maybe try doing it like this, or at least understand that's what I'm doing. Excellent question. Excellent question. So let's have a break. We've been going for a while. Can we have a 5-minute break and then reconvene? Okay, so welcome back. And this is something we mentioned last week, but I just want to reiterate it. This is a little model I made of what I call the pulse space. So this shows the artery that sits inside the theoretical space that it could be in. Okay, now this is from your perspective of where you are on the screen. Imagine you're looking down out towards the hand, and this is kind of the end of the space. This would then be the first position, the second position, the third position, and this is a sort of reminder that the skin is at the top, the bone is at the bottom, and this is basically where it could be inside this space. it can also be in a different position, as you might have realized from feeling people's arteries. But this is approximately, I think it might be a little bigger, but it's approximately how big the artery is inside the space it could be in. So, Karina, you're going to let somebody in? So basically, in fact, the next section relies on this idea. So this is nice to review this, that the artery, this is going to be for A3, the artery can either be felt mostly at the bottom, felt mostly in the middle, or felt mostly at the top. So you get a sense that it's not, it maybe has got an uneven distribution in the space. So that's basically what the 3 levels are about. It's approximately, well, the middle, when it's healthy, you're imagining you're looking at an artery like this, and somewhere in the middle, when it's too deep, it's like that. When it's too high, it's like that. So that's basically the artery in its space. Okay, actually, we didn't quite finish doing all of the material for the A2 reading. So I will go back to that. And we do screen share again.
Welcome, Sheila.
Welcome, Sheila. Welcome, welcome. Hey, so what we are doing is a case study for the 3 Jiao. Okay, now this was somebody who had infertility. A male patient, oh, there's a typo, presented with unexplained infertility. He had on the face of it kidney yang deficiency. And when I say on the face of it, this was like pretty clear that it was kidney yang deficiency. And my kind of original plan was to do moxa and acupuncture on the kidney and the stomach channels in his case. So okay, so fair enough, that was all good. But then I came to do the pulse diagnosis, and sorry, there's another typo. I'd have to explain why it came out like this, but I won't do it right now. Anyway, he otherwise appeared physically fit and did not report any physical problems on questioning, as he was thinking that he was coming for treatment for the fertility problem only. So he didn't think it was relevant. So basically, you might have found this with people, that sometimes they don't say all the things that are important in the case. They just kind of want you to get on with their with the treatment. So this is what I then found out, that he exercised a lot, like in my sort of opinion, too much. And on the pulse diagnosis, the rear position of, when rear is third, of both sides showed an unexpected bilateral excess quality. So I then said, well, is there anything, thinking about the 3 Jiaos, I was thinking, is there anything going on for the lower part of your body? And like, no. Have you got any back problems? And he said, yes, I've got a long-term back issue, like chronic back pain, that he always has. So in other words, he always has back pain. So yeah, I just find it interesting that obviously I had asked him about how his health was generally, but it just didn't come up. It didn't come up at all that it could be as simple as this, that it's a long-term back issue that is going on as well. And it's just because he didn't think it was relevant to the case at all. Because he was thinking he's there for infertility, and that's nothing, like, nothing to do with the back. But I thought it was really, really important. So even though the main treatment I gave to him was the points on the kidney and the stomach channel with the acupuncture and moxa, with this new information about the back, I also gave him local treatment on the back. I gave him massage, and use of the heat lamp and herb paste was added in the prone position. So I basically treated him face up to begin with, then turned him over and carried on treatment. And there's local treatment on the back. So the thought that was going on here was that I just get the annotation or the spotlight. Yeah. Basically, that over time he overexercised, depleting kidney qi and yang, and this made him have a weakness in the back, more susceptible to injury. And then when that injury has occurred, there's local pain with excess qualities on the pulse in the third position. The back is kind of like tender in the back. So my take on this was it's a combination of long-term kidney yang depletion with simultaneous qi stagnation. And that's a good example. That's a good explanation for why he had infertility. And also for me, it was a sign that working with the lower back was necessary. So I suppose what I'm saying here is that the pulse has shown what's necessary in treatment. It's given me as a practitioner the sense that it matters. So it's not just that he has the yang deficiency. He has the local trauma, and that is also in the lower back area that kind of we know is important in it's the Ming Man, it's the kind of gate of vitality that is necessary to even make the yang work. So I hope that's not too complicated. Any questions about this case? No. Okay. Good. All right. So that was, I thought that was a good example of, Karina?
Did it resolve the infertility?
No, but it's because he only came a short while, and I think he couldn't I think he didn't basically, he just couldn't understand why I was treating his back for it. But I was really clear that his back needed treating along with the other signs. So he should have stayed with it. But we have this all the time in treatment, that people sometimes just don't understand. And even though I try to explain, it's people need that commitment to stay with it sometimes. So unfortunately they didn't, it didn't work, but that's only because they had one treatment. It was one of those cases where he was like, all right, okay, do I need another? I'm like, yes, you do. You've got to stop exercising. You need to get that yang back again and sort the back out. So all of those things would work. But anyway, that was that. All right, so that was the case study for that. So 3 layers is next. Okay, the 3 layers method. Okay, so these 3 layers are a way of thinking of the pulse as having 3 depths. So the layers are layers in the pulse. So you can imagine you've got 3 layers to it. And
Can we just, Jamie, sorry, can we just clarify this is the new bit for people?
Sorry, this is the new bit.
Who
Excellent. Thank you, Karina.
Who've done it before.
Yeah. New. Pay attention. Those who have done this method before, this is new. Although this was, I think Sheila might have been on the course where I had started working with it. This was, I've basically developed it over the last few years. So it's new in comparison to the book, it's new, but I've been teaching this for a while now. So basically, we can imagine that the pulse space is divided from the skin on the surface down to the bone. This is all, you can palpate all of this depth from light to middle to lower, down to the bone. And the way to think of 3 is to imagine the middle line, okay? And that when you put your fingers down on the pulse from here down, we enter into the middle. This wooden thing is like our intention or our finger pressure. We have entered to this point, and that's the middle depth. If we go down further towards the bone into the bottom third, then this is the kind of the third level, and coming up is the first level. So that's kind of how you find the middle. You have to go all the way to the middle and then come back out, and then you'll find the upper, or to the middle and down, and you'll find the third level. You have to kind of calibrate all the way through. It's easier to do it than to say it practically. It's a bit like being in a room and saying, okay, well, we've got 3 layers to the room. There's the middle layer, the upper layer, and the lower layer. So it is fairly simple. And as I've written on the left-hand side of the screen, we can think of this upper layer as being with Wei Qi. Okay, our defensive Qi. And just like that phrase from the last method, that they tend to be of equal grade, when the pulse is healthy, it should be at equal grade of all of this. There should be no gaps in the strength. The nutritive Qi, or Yin Qi, is next. And at the root is the Jing, or essence. Now, this is I class this as being advanced. It isn't really advanced. It's just if you're trying to do absolutely everything as a beginner, you can easily get disheartened because you're thinking, oh, I've got to think of too many things. I think that's totally valid. I don't want anybody to be disheartened because there's too much information. So this is a useful way of viewing the artery when you've kind of got good at all of the whole method. So it's probably worth coming back to this, like later on, and see if you can find anything useful. It's a nice system. It works well, and it can give you really interesting information. So basically, it comes up sometimes that there is a gap in the system, or there's too much of it there's too much of one of these layers. So an example of there being too much of one of these layers is when you have, for instance, too much in this upper layer of the Wei Qi. So when there's too much in the Wei Qi, we actually call this floating. So when with all our 3 fingers, we've come down and we feel, wow, even before I've gone deeper, there's too much energy at the top layer of the pulse. There's too much energy of this top layer of this pulse space. That's an example of what we call floating. It feels bouncy and there's too much up there. That's a sign. It's not actually an unhealthy sign, but it's a sign that there is a pathogen present and the body is actively fighting it out. So this is actually a really good sign. We want there to be, when it's appropriate, Wei Qi active. So it's a sign that the pathogen is present on the exterior of the body, in the skin and the hair, and that the Wei Qi is going to try and force it out. And that's what's going on. There's a battle between the pathogen coming in and the Wei Qi pushing out the pathogen. So that's what's going on. It's kind of really fun. It's really exciting to put your fingers on the pulse and realize that's what's happening. I don't know if you folks have got this experience. I find it's very common that people come for treatment. There've been so many colds going on. I don't know if in Norway also there are lots of colds and coughs and colds, but there's like total epidemic, or at least it was going on like last month. People are coming out of it, but now they still come and they're like, I've still got the edge of it. It's useful in a way to use this kind of reading to see where is their energy, how is their energy kind of manifesting? Are they still fighting something? Because if they are, that's useful information that they are still fighting something. You can still do some releasing of the exterior in your treatment to try to get the pathogen out still. So this is important to be able to realize. It's important to recognize a floating pulse in all of the pulse. So basically left and right as floating on the first layer is floating. That's important. By the way, floating is not the only thing you might find. The easiest way of doing this is just excess or deficiency, or forceful or forceless. So you could theoretically do it out of 5. I don't tend to, but the idea is in health it should be like 3 out of 5 for all of them, just kind of medium, forceful, forceless. So this is a kind of another example of using this excess deficiency reading, but looking at these 3 layers. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Ruth.
So I'm thinking about, we've got the AB, the A1, AB, the A1, A2, A3.
Yes.
Are all of them, you're treating your fingers as one unit?
Yes. Well, okay, so
not in the middle, not in the A2,
not
presumably.
exactly, but in fact, what you're not doing is you're not really moving your fingers very much. You're just more putting your intention into each finger. If I could imagine that. You may be moving them a little bit, but it's more like just temporarily, you get a sense of the whole. I mean, actually, it's quite advanced to do that. What happens is that when something's missing, you notice it, or when there's too much of something, you notice it. It comes to you. So it isn't the same as the individual finger searching that goes on in the 6 positions, which is really detailed, which has got a lot of detailed work on it. It just has it has a different with this, it's more like you're putting your fingers on the whole pulse, and you are sensing, are there any gaps in the artery, or is it overrepresented? In a way, what you're looking for is the wholeness of it. You're looking for the whole manifestation of that pulse, not and if there are gaps, you'll feel them. So
gaps?
Yeah, in fact,
in what?
either
Sorry.
the gaps either in the gaps in the manifestation of the forcefulness of it. So a gap would be going from, let's say we're looking, just staying on this 3 levels example. A gap could be that instead of there being equally forceful at the top, equally forceful at the middle, equally forceful at the lower, there's a gap at the top. There's no energy at the top, which can happen. So if you start looking for this, if you start looking for the gaps in this system, it kind of catapults you into a really deep way of looking at the body. So it is actually quite an advanced, it is actually a really advanced aspect of this, that you don't have to worry too much about. So that's why this way of thinking is kind of optional. It's optional in that it's more advanced. So to begin with, kind of don't worry too much about it. You'll get sensitive enough to look for gaps in the system. Looking for a gap is a bit like having a group of people and trying to figure out who's not in the room.
Mm.
It's much more difficult than thinking who's there.
Mm.
Like if you had a group of 10 people, you could easily miss somebody. and then think, oh wow, they're not there. So it's like that. That's looking for a gap. So with
you can have a forceless pulse, which is floating.
yes, that's true. Yes, you could.
Yeah.
You actually, a forceless pulse. In the going back to the. Hang on, I'll just go to do screen share again. So let's say you did. Let's say I'm thinking of this person with a cold, and or they've got the remnants of a cold, and with one, the overall pulse, this came out as being deficient on both sides. Well, this is not likely to have a force. This is not likely to result in a floating pulse in the rest of the picture. It is possible, but you'd have to be very, very sensitive to feel that floating. What's more likely is that you would have actually 4 and 4 for a floating pulse. When you first touch, you just think, wow, there's some sort of fullness here. Then when you do A2, which is the 3 joule, let's say there's no reading, it's just fine. All joule are fine. So that didn't give you any information. When you come to the 3 layers of A3, then you found that the upper layer was, okay, this is not what you would write, but I mean, just to explain it, the upper layer was floating. Oh, rather, the upper layer was full. So this fullness of the 4 was actually because of this floating upper layer. I mean, floating is just a word we use. It has a particular quality. We can then write out floating because we know it is, because it has a sort of this, floating has got a sense of this kind of bouncing fullness on the top. So that's the more likely way that you might read it. It just so happens, though, that then if you really examine it carefully, you might then notice that the top is full, but these ones are actually deficient. So that would just be extra information, extra sensitivity. So you might write upper layer, I do UL for upper layer full, floating, and I might write, let's say, middle layer or lower layer empty.
But would you ever find it full everywhere?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So as I said, this is just the beginning of a way of doing diagnosis. And yeah, it could be full throughout, in which case that's a real excess finding. So that would be an example of fullness when it's not balanced. If it was kind of like 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3, then that would be super easy, super even. I mean, I should have said. That's ideal. If it was, let's say, 5 at the top, 1 in the middle, and 3 at the bottom, then that would mean the middle layer is got a real bad deficiency. So what does that relate to, this middle layer? It's the nutritive qi. So when we don't have enough energy in the nutritive qi, that's like our blood and the products of our digestion are not have not been developed properly. So that can easily cause lots of problems. So this would be maybe a situation that you might find with ME patients, that they have a kind of empty middle, and there's a floatingness as well. So the only difference for an ME person is that they might have a less strong pulses initially. It might be what I wrote initially, 2 and 2 for an ME person. I hope that's not too confusing, but it can be useful to talk about concrete examples. If you are confused, sorry, but it is definitely an advanced stage, and this kind of requires more sensitivity than the rest of the method, because this is already a very complex picture of how much energy is at every level. It becomes so this is an advanced view. So that's this is an example though of when it's useful to see the general picture. This particular example.
Can I have a question?
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
It just reminds me that there is this hollow pulse or the drum skin pulse, and within those 27 pulses.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the hollow pulse might be similar to what I just drew. I think that this might be an example of a hollow pulse. That would be definitely worth exploring. So yes, that's a good example. Incidentally, the Shen hammer system has got something very similar to this, and they use, instead of defensive chi, nutritive chi, and essence, they've just got slightly different terms, but it's nearly the same. So this particular way of understanding the layers comes out of the teachings of Jeffrey Yuen, but it's extremely similar to the Shen hammer system of these 3 layers. So the Shen hammer system has got these very nice ideas of it breaking, like the layers breaking up, and that you can go down, it kind of breaks up as you go down, or as you come back out again, it breaks up as you go back out. So that's kind of like going into this particular model deeper and deeper and deeper. This last model of the 3 layers, I kind of give it more of a quick view, so that's not my particular focus in general, but it's like, so in other words, it's advanced for me as well. I'm happy with the rest of the method, and I get the majority of my information out of step B and step C, but it's just a very nice theoretical theoretical advanced step. And furthermore, as you will see next time, this feeds almost exactly in to the first of the 3 extraordinary vessels that we will do, which are basically the Du, the Ren, and the Chong. So the understanding of these layers relates to these 3 extraordinary vessels found in the 3 layers. So it kind of this is a sort of development of information as well. So yeah, this is not the beginner level, this 3 layers, but it's not that hard either. And when it comes up, it's very satisfying to think, there's a gap in these layers. So for instance, on this slide here, the idea that the Jing, or essence, is the root. Another way of thinking about the pulse is that there's no, let's say here where I'm just doing the highlighter, there's no root. This is gone. If this is void, this section down here, then that's a problem. So that would feel like a sort of emptiness lower down. So if you start to get sensitive to this, you can start to think, that's really interesting. The essence is compromised. So we don't want there to be gaps in our pulse. We want there to be a fullness. So we want a defensive chi, yes. We want the nutritive chi, yes. We want the essence, yes. We want there to be a full complement in these 3 systems, which kind of encompass all of our metabolism. But if there's a gap, then we just have to obviously have lots of acupuncture, right? But or rest more, or eat better. So yeah, or not do the Wim Hof method of sitting in an ice bath every day. You know, various things. You would start to notice more and more things that matter when you also know what like if you really know what defensive chi means, you start thinking, oh, this will be really interesting. I can see how the defensive chi is, see if there's any issues to do with it. So this model becomes more and more important with something like autoimmune systems diseases. Now, does Ruth have a question?
Yes.
Good.
Um,
Good.
I'm just thinking about what you were saying about the space that the
Yes.
artery is in,
Yeah.
and just being really material about it. Like
Yes.
if you've got an artery running in a space and it's full at all three levels,
Yes.
does that mean the artery is actually bigger, is carrying
Okay.
more blood? I mean,
Okay. So I thought this might come up, and this is a valid question because it actually is
yeah.
different. It's different to what I am intending to do for the rest of the method, but there's something very strange that happened. I mean, okay, this is a little diversion, but basically there is something very peculiar that happens with the pulse, and I would like to know what is happening with it more. But basically, it depends what questions you ask it, and
It's magic.
this has happened. I mean, it basically is how it is, and I don't really understand it. But basically, if you ask it, how are the layers? Are the layers equally represented at all three layers? And you put your fingers in, you get that. You just get that. You get that information. It's so weird. So that is just basically of the three layers. You put your fingers in, and you will feel it full at one layer and empty at the other and full at the other, a hollow pulse. You just get that information. If you
But you're pushing the artery down
well,
towards the bone, are you?
I mean, this is again, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with my fingers if I'm asking that, but I think what I'm doing is I'm kind of putting my fingers into the stream of where the artery runs and not really focusing on the artery itself. I'm focusing on the sensation of a pulse somewhere. So this is basically the whole of the whole of A is more diffuse, your perception, and you don't think of the artery. And that changes when we do B and when we do C. I'm going to want you to realize there's an artery and get your fingers right on top of it and sense, where is this artery, where is this excess going on. The truth is, I believe probably the artery is bigger. See this model I've done. I believe the artery is probably bigger than this. It's probably like as big as my hand. So in other words, when the artery is high, it's more or less still filling the space, but it just is kind of got a higher presentation. It's kind of bigger in the space. But just to make diagrams or even to think about it, you just got to imagine that the artery is sometimes higher or lower. So that's so basically it's somewhere the actual size of the artery is bigger than that. And
in your wrist, if you were to dissect
yes,
literally,
yes,
I mean there aren't gaps, are there? I mean there's layers of fascia wrapping around everything. So
yeah,
I mean
yeah.
if a Western doctor was listening to this, what a Western trained
Well,
doctor,
okay, well
what
that's
would
really
they
interesting.
make of
I have
it?
actually often wondered about this, and as it happens, my cousin is a consultant cardiac radiologist.
Huh?
Okay, so that means okay,
Uh-huh.
right. Okay,
Is
so
this in your book?
yes,
Uh-huh.
so actually this is an MRI scan of. I'll show you this one. This is actually an MRI scan of of a
On
wrist.
the wrist, yeah.
And well, there you go. It is actually, that's exactly what it is, right? So there is space. It doesn't fill it up altogether. So it's more or less like it's filling up 2/3 of the space it could be in, I'd estimate, or half.
And what's around it?
Well, it's not air.
No.
It's not.
Interstitial fluid of some
It
kind.
could be fluid. Yeah. So to finish my story, I asked my cousin, does he have images of this that he could share with me? And he doesn't. So the interesting thing is that we only take pictures of things that we're interested in, and the radial artery is not very interesting for doctors in particular. It's interesting to us, but is not very interesting to people. So this was I can't remember where I found it, somewhere online, but you know, this was just one example of an MRI scan through the wrist. I drew another diagram off the thing that I got from the internet, but yeah, so it does have it has some space above and below, but I believe okay, so that's what the artery looks like in the body. But remember, this thing is not dead. It's full of blood. And because it's full of blood, it must make waves of the pulse. The pulse is the blood inside it, but it must also behave in other ways in its space. So it's pulsing in itself, but the pulse of the artery itself must be propagating through the space around it. And I think that sometimes when we put our fingers in this area, sometimes we miss, when we put our fingers in the area, we sometimes miss where the artery is and go to one side or the other, and we don't get on top of it. And then that means that what we're feeling is the pulsing of the artery in the fluids next to where the artery is. Or something.
It's like an earthworm crawling through the
Yes,
ground. It's sort of,
exactly.
that's the blood going through the veins.
Exactly. It's like an earthworm propagating. The propagation of the wave is going along the yeah, that's an excellent thing. Yeah. So and from my experience, that artery can be in a different place in this space. So this, where my finger is now, is the same as that pulse space model I've made. It basically, the artery can be to the left, it could be to the right, it could be higher or lower. And if we don't focus on the artery exactly, we just have a sense of it being full in the top, full in the middle, full at the bottom. If we focus on the artery, then it changes, and we have suddenly got a different picture going on. So I hope that gives you an answer, Ruth. It's
something to think about, certainly. Yeah,
a lot to think about, exactly. And I just want to leave you with the going back to the simplicity of this step. Basically, A2, the three jiao, A3, the three levels. That's complicated, right? With those three together, you've got 3 times 3, and that's actually called the 9 indicators in the classics. Sometimes you might have read, oh, if you can understand the 9 indicators, then you'll understand everything. Well, it's true. If you only use the system of the 3 jiao and the 3 levels, you would get a long way. But I actually don't want you to do that, to only use it. I want you to use it as a warm-up. So it's very much presented, especially A3, as a further step deeper into the system. Staying with just A, step A, the simplest thing is excess and deficiency. If you just do that without thinking about the artery, just got a sense of the fullness and emptiness of the whole artery on both sides, you will get so far with your diagnosis because you will know exactly what to feel later. So it's just that if you get more information that comes out from the 3 jiao or the 3 layers, you'll know where to put it in your thinking. So that is basically all I need to say today. we've been through the excess and deficiency of the overall pulse method. We've been through the 3-joule method to show these 3 positions in the body. And lastly, we've been through this 3 levels where the different kinds of energy there may be a gap in some of the energies of our body. So that gives you obviously a great starting point, but the main thing is then to dive into the rest of the system. So that's pretty much it. Any other, in fact, I'm just going to turn the lights on in here because it's getting dark. Any other questions? Maybe it's too bright.
I think just need to take lots of pulses.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yes, I mean, obviously take lots of pulses with this new information, with these new lens in. And actually, it'll be quite nice for you to do this without doing the other bits of the method. So you can see what information can you get out of this layer. And another question.
It's just that sometimes the pulse is big and sometimes it's very fine.
Exactly. Well, those are qualities.
Mm.
Yes.
So do they come into the next, into B and C?
No, those are qualities that they're still in step A, and that I think I mentioned that's like it's not exactly advanced because you just feel it straight away. But when you're trying to do the thing that we just described, you may just suddenly realize the pulse is big, and then you think, well, what is that? And then you could read the pulse descriptions from a book and see which one does it match. There is actually a thing called a big pulse. Does it match that one? Or is it wide? It's probably a Hong wide pulse, or that's also called surging. Or a thin. If you feel the thinness of it, you're really feeling it accurately. You know that is thinness that you're feeling when it's a thin pulse. Great question. Basically, that's when you feel the thin pulse at that point.
And what about it when you feel it? It's almost like little tiny string of beads. You know,
then yes, well,
that's
another...
a quality, and then
Yeah.
somebody else will have one that's much more sort of bloop bloop bloop, and somebody else has got pip pip pip. You know.
Yeah. Well, those are qualities. They're basically those are basically qualities, and at that point, in fact, you might even find those. You might even kind of come to the conclusion of those things much later after you've done all the method. And you think, oh yeah, I think the whole pulse is. I can't get over how the whole pulse has got like the bean, that what you said, a string of beans, or a soft and marshy. Then you can get a book out and look it up and say, oh wow, okay. Yeah, in fact, I'll do another screen share for this. Hi Sheila, I can see you. Back to that one. Yep. Okay. And sorry, just get it. So let's just look up. So for instance, yeah, do you get a book out and then you might think, is it, you said soft, that marshy one? Is that marshy one, read the description, extremely soft, floating and fine, or is it extremely soft, deep and fine, pressing down, it cuts off from the finger. So when you press down into it, you can't feel it at all, or is it an empty pulse? Soft, large, slow, large, and soft. When you press down, it hides from the finger, it opens up to be empty. So you can read those descriptions and think, oh, okay, I think it's, you can kind of figure out which one it is by reading a description in a book. In my method, I like using the original Chinese because it's so simple that I find the definitions are actually quite simple for it. The other one which you mentioned, well, we know that this slippery pulse is sometimes described as a pearls or something like blobs in a line. But slippery comes and goes forwards and backwards in a flow, extending and turning. It resembles the rapid pulse. So that's another one, a kind of bubbling stream, perhaps. So using these descriptions, which can have a kind of poetic quality, can give you a better steer into exactly what the pulse type is that you're feeling. Any questions, Sheila? No. Okay, it's all right. No trouble. Okay. Karina, any comments or Sheila, any comments or anything?
I just wonder, does anybody need the review, or is that all good and you can look it over on the recording, or do you want to just finish off with any other sort of review, or have you,
I think I just did review.
That's great. Yeah, no, yeah, you did. I mean, visually, you
I
know.
mean, basically, to cut a long story short, step A is the big picture, and step B and C, you're going in deeper. So I've given you obviously quite a lot of information to work with in terms of a method. So you can, use it. But if you'll just only do excess and deficiency, I'm happy, because out of that also, just by doing that, you will have the possibility of feeling some different pulses as you're going along. So you get to a point where you think, wow, okay, great. It's basically deficient and slippery, let's say. Well, that's already quite a lot of information. And I suppose the thing that I like about this is, because you don't force the process of looking for a quality, it comes to you, and then it feels very solid, like you know what it is, rather than thinking that you can't feel it. So I think I've mentioned this to people when I was trying to describe this method, is that it's more to do with the shape of the artery and the space. Gives you more information than going into the exact quality of the blood and the blood flow, or the exact feeling of the artery. But if you get sensitive enough, suddenly it will jump out at you, and then that's like, okay, I got it. I got that reading. So occasionally you'll say, yes, this is slippery. I know what a slippery pulse is, because you just felt it. Good. Well, we will explore more. I wish I could do a practical demonstration for you now. But instead, just go and feel as many pulses as you can, and see what you can find. Okay, and don't worry about it too much as well. Just enjoy yourself, but just try and get to the readings of excess and deficiency out, and use that out of 5 method. It's easy. Good. Well, that's where we'll leave it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you next time. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And
have a happy Easter holiday.
Happy Easter. Happy Easter.